Colleagues, some 40 years ago, as the most junior reporter in the AP Bureau in Portland, I was honored and I must say somewhat shocked to be assigned the task of summing up Governor Tom McCall's entire 2 terms in office in one 1,200-word story. Little did I know at the time that in the course of doing this bigger-than-life Republican would inspire this Democrat into a path of public service that led me here. So today, in supporting this bill, I wanted to read you all the story that I wrote some 40 years ago, January 21st, 1974. It was in the Eugene Register-Guard, summing up the career of Governor Tom McCall. Governor Tom McCall of Oregon was furious 2 years ago when a hiker fell to his death off Cape Kiwanda on the Oregon coast. Fence Cape Kiwanda immediately, he ordered the highway department. We can't, said the highway department. Oregon doesn't own Cape Kiwanda. It does now. 7 years ago, McCall vowed to clean up the Willamette River, which links Oregon's major industrial centers. We can't, complained the polluters. It's not feasible. It is now safe to swim in the Willamette River. 4 months ago, McCall ordered a ban on outdoor display lighting to save energy. You don't have the authority to do that, blustered the sign industry. Then take me to court, said McCall. No one did. McCall's methods are seldom conventional, frequently unpopular, and sometimes strain legality. But he has led Oregon to national prominence in the areas of environment, social reform, governmental reorganization, and now energy management, including a voluntary state gasoline rationing plan. These accomplishments may turn into a presidential platform for McCall 60, who is talking about launching a third force campaign to fill what he considers a vacuum left by the Democratic Party and his own Republican Party. The third force is the force that says why you can do things instead of why you can't, McCall says. It's the force of hope versus disappointment, and optimism versus pessimism. The third force is the force carrying the Oregon story. If by political accident McCall should become president, his campaign war chest is up to $15 now, a cynical nation can prepare itself for a leader who carries candor to refreshing extremes. He's a kind of Cracker Barrel sophisticate, observed Portland radio news commentator John Salisbury shortly after McCall took office in 1967. The governor is a product of Eastern Seaboard aristocracy and a Central Oregon upbringing. The grandson of a former Massachusetts congressman and governor, Samuel W. McCall, Tom was born in Egypt, Massachusetts, at the home of his maternal grandfather, Thomas W. Lawson, a well-known financier, author, and sportsman. He grew up on his father's ranch near Prineville. McCall earned a journalism degree from the University of Oregon in 1936 and later served as a Navy correspondent in the Pacific Theater during World War II. His governmental experience includes 3 years as Governor Douglas McKay's administrative assistant from 1949 to 1952, and half a term as Secretary of State from 1964 to 1966. A well-muscled 6 feet 5 inches, McCall looks like a woodsman and speaks with what one writer described as an outrageous Back Bay accent. He's a popular speaker, extremely quotable, and fond of superlatives. Sagebrush, subdivision, coastal condomania, and the ravenous rampage of suburbia in the Willamette Valley all threaten to mock Oregon's status as the environmental model for the nation, McCall boomed in his message to the 1973 legislature. He described overeager land developers as grasping wastrels of the land. For McCall, the pollution from an Albany mill is more than just pollution. It's a cancer on the green bosom of the Willamette Valley, he told the Albany Chamber of Commerce in 1970. A former television news commentator, McCall attacks any issue with uncensored candor, prompting one observer to accuse him of shooting from the lip. As a leader, he concedes they just don't make them any publicer. But he insists there's method to my madness. I'm more of a catalytic force than a person. Sometimes I know I'm going to take a whaling, but it's important to be said. For instance, McCall upset some Republicans at the 1970 Republican Governors Conference by calling Spiro Agnew's lecture to the governors on party unity a rotten, bigoted little speech. And at the Western Governors Conference last September, McCall's first act as host was to issue his executive order banning outdoor display lighting in Oregon. An entire industry reeled in disbelief. It struck a ringing note to open the conference on, said McCall. It would get rid of the most superfluous segment of our use of energy and also be dramatic enough so that other states would move and so that the general public in our states would be challenged. 2 months later, vacationing in Hawaii, McCall learned that the Northwest power shortage had eased. He lifted the ban as suddenly as he had imposed it. McCall alienated some Oregon businessmen when he told a nationwide television audience in 1971 that people were welcome to visit Oregon but not to stay. He alienated practically everyone in 1969 by supporting a statewide sales tax that voters slaughtered 8-1. Yet many observers see McCall as the most popular and possibly the best governor Oregon has had, even though he doesn't shun unpopular actions. He's outspoken, and when he blows it, he'll admit it, said State Treasurer Jim Redden. His priorities have been people priorities, I think. McCall agrees with the analysis. The thing I've heard more than anything else about me is people saying we disagree with you on certain things, but we always know where you stand, and therefore we trust you. That's good enough for me. In reacting to the issues, I think I'm the quintessence of averageness, McCall continues. I think like more people. And my charisma comes from the fact that I'm saying what so many people feel, and I'm probably saying it as well as they can say it. Or better? Well, you might say that. McCall doesn't take lightly the trust he enjoys. He said, I agonize, God, I agonize. Living with some of the things I do is subject to constant reassessment by me. McCall has an uncanny sense of timing in springing issues. The psychological moment is just as important as the thoroughness of documentation, he says. The utility of most of these ideas depends on their timeliness, not on studying them for 12 years and then coming out when it's not even appropriate. When public outrage was strong but disorganized over the shipment of lethal nerve gas through the state, McCall organized a petition drive that generated 100,000 signatures. He was getting super conservative Republicans sitting with super liberal Democrats on a common cause of protecting the state from the potential of genocide, said a McCall aide, Ron Schmidt, and it worked. McCall's candor extends to his personal life. Last summer, when he twice underwent surgery for prostate cancer and complications, news coverage with gubernatorial consent stopped just short of television cameras in the operating room. The people have a right to know the details of their governor's physical condition so that they might make a judgment of his capacity to govern, he told the Oregon division of the American Cancer Society. Some Oregonians were offended by the explicit coverage, but it convinced many men to go in for checkups, a grateful medical profession reported. 4 years ago, when news leaked out that McCall's 21-year-old son, Sam, was a drug addict, the Oregon Press Corps tactfully ignored it. Not so McCall. He appeared with his son on NBC's First Tuesday show, telling the nation of Sam's addiction and about Oregon's new methadone program that freed Sam and others from drug dependency. Not all Oregonians are enchanted by McCall, and some undoubtedly appreciate the section of the Oregon Constitution that prevents him from seeking a consecutive third term in office. In 1969, recall petitions were circulated, and Grace A. Lean of Estacada wrote the editor of the Benton County Herald in Corvallis, Governor McCall must know that Oregonians are infuriated with the first he saddled us with. I understand we're first to have private land taken out of control of owners, first to have our state divided into service districts irrespective of county lines and county control, etc. ad nauseum. The recall attempt failed miserably, indicating that most Oregonians are more proud than furious with their first. But it's entirely possible that the constituents of Oregon's pioneering governor will welcome the chance to sit back and rest a while when McCall's successor takes over next January. They haven't had a chance like that in 7 years. Colleagues, I urge support of Senate Bill 333.
Discussion. Senator Johnson, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. My parents knew the McCall family well. Sam, my father, had briefly dated one of Governor McCall's sisters prior to their subsequent World War II marriages to others. Sam visited Dorothy McCall at the ranch under the Rim Rocks in Central Oregon, where he lived, on many occasions. Arriving at the ranch, one never knew if they would be greeted by a drink or the business end of a shotgun. I met Governor McCall several times, and in a story too long to recount today, helped acquire 2 gold-plated, pearl-handled guns, wedding presents to Dorothy McCall from the Copper King, her father. These guns were used to hold off revenue agents attempting to foreclose on the ranch. The same guns were pawned by his mother to help finance the governor's journalism degree. These 2 weapons are now part of the Oregon Historical Society's permanent collection. Out of an abiding respect for his moderate and often maverick approach to legislation and the legislative process, 4 of his original campaign posters are proudly displayed in my office. Maybe the 2015 legislative session, now only 4 weeks old, can draw some inspiration from Governor McCall's farewell address to the 1975 Legislative Assembly. He said, "May your quest go well. May we continue to find accord and high purpose. May we forever prove by our action that people can join together for mutual benefit and the greater good. May we continue to work together. May we face and endure every winter with spring forever on our minds." Please join me in supporting Senate Bill 333.